Hey everybody, Balchin Jr. here, back again with a brand new episode of Talking Serverless. Talking Serverless is a podcast show where we talk about serverless. It's pretty straightforward, and today I'm really excited because I've got Shivam, who I saw made a comment on LinkedIn under Alex Debris' post about the reduction of DynamoDB pricing, and Shivam built this really cool kind of like pricing calculator. And I was really impressed with it. And then I took a look, and he's been doing more and more in the serverless community and definitely works a lot with AWS and is a great cloud native developer. So I wanted to get him on the show, get his experiences, and hopefully you'll enjoy that. So with that, let's get into it. Shivam, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being here. Like I said, I saw you made a cool comment. I saw you had these calculators. Then I saw you had courses, and you were really into the AWS ecosystem. So, just to start out, can you like introduce yourself and tell us about how you kind of got to being an AWS developer? Like what's your story?
Yeah, so basically, I was, initially just doing the front end development with JavaScript. Then React came in, then I learned React and all. Then, I was like, for backend, I was using the usual stuff Express, Node.js, and all that, MongoDB. And then, like AWS was getting, a bit of hype, like at that, few years ago, like all this serverless thing, Lambda, and like and then I thought, I got a client, and like they wanted a music streaming platform. So like I said, it's like challenging, but previously I just worked with EC2, like then it was like okay, let's give this a shot. So I tried it, and I learned the serverless on my way with all the AWS services, Lambda, Cognito, DynamoDB, and all that.
All right. So, but like, how did you start to transition into it? Like, what did you have to learn?
Actually, I had a leverage. Like I had a friend who already built system, like, and he was like an AWS pro. So like whenever I got stuck, and like he gave me suggestion. Like initially, I was like I looked up online tutorials and all. Like then I was using SAM. So then like he suggested me try CDK. At that time, CDK was just version 1, and lot of things were just in alpha, like they were not even properly constructs and all. So yeah, like he helped me pick up the right tech. So like you use Lambda, you use DynamoDB. Then I went through the AWS docs and like saw, oh okay, this looks cool, like less than single digit, like, and all that, like.
Yeah, all of the benefits of using these managed services really caught your eye, right? How did you feel about going from like a traditional, what do they call them, MERN stack,
Yes.
from like MERN and traditional server, like long running server processes, to distributed cloud stuff? Like, how did you see the transition, and what did you have to change about how you architected things?
So mostly the thing is, we have to use managed services if we are doing serverless, because that's the scaling part is managed by, like in case right now, AWS. And I had to do some a lot of, not just some, lot of learning. There is lot of learning curve to serverless. There are not as many resources as for a MERN developer compared to a serverless stack. Like if I am going to work with serverless, like lot of things are right now, but 3 years ago there were very little, like barely any videos. It was just Lambda, then like CDK was like a child at that time, then like so yeah.
Yeah, the early days of CDK. I remember when it came out, and I've been in the serverless field since it basically began. I saw Lambdas really early on and went all in. I said there's no reason for me to build an Express server anymore, especially with frameworks like serverless framework and architect and CDK. And I've had my spats back and forth with CDK, but we can get into IAC a little bit later into the program. But first, you mentioned that you had a friend who was already like a big pro in AWS, and so that was a big influence for you.
Yes. Like if he wasn't there, I could not have, made like a streaming platform on AWS.
Perfect. Yeah. So in a previous life, I used to be a commercial photographer,
Okay.
and I find a lot of similarities between the profession and the craft of programming and photography because you have to pick a system, you have to pick a camera. You have a lot of these technical decisions to make, and it sort of drives what products you're going to pick up, how you're going to use these things. And for me, I would tell other photographers, I was like, find your friends, find the cameras that they're using, use their cameras because then you can share lenses, you can share gear. It's less daunting to get into the system. And I'm glad to hear that you've done the exact same thing, right? Like you already like why choose AWS because I had friends who were already doing it, and that is a perfectly valid reason.
Yeah, and also it looked very interesting. Like I was always intrigued by AWS. Like, oh, it costs so less. I don't have to, pay, like keep paying even if I'm not using the services. That was the, another major factor.
I knew I wanted to continue to use serverless managed services because I am terrible at SSHing into boxes. Like,
Okay.
if you have to run a Heroku Dynamo or you have to run what is it, a DigitalOcean droplet, you still got to SSH in. And I tell people if I have to SSH, then I've already messed up somewhere, right? Like if I have to if I have to go into the machine, I've picked the wrong abstraction for my use case. So that's really cool. But then let me ask you this: like, how did you go from learning from your friend, doing things and building things, and then decide, oh, I want to start making educational content on my own, which is something that you do now, right? Like, can you tell us about sort of how did you get into the creation of that content? Sort of what drives you to do that?
I mean, like I had, YouTube channel like when it was not so popular. Like I was just, making like my first video was like AI voice generated video, and like I just put in the text and like some screen recording. Like that's how I started making content. And like I only made content where I felt like, hey, someone should have made this content. Maybe I can, help some people by making these type of content. And for AWS, I felt like there were very limited resources, and the docs are, they are not very beginner friendly. So I am like, okay, a beginner would, because it took me days to get something done, something which is bit complex. If you don't have someone who already knows it, it is harder then. Like if you have someone, which I had, then it becomes a bit easier. But for a beginner, like that's when I thought, okay, let's contribute to some of the, AWS resources on learning.
Do you have any favorite pieces of content that you made early on that really like gave you confidence to continue making things?
I can't really remember. Like, previously I was just making random videos which I thought, might help people. And I'm like, full stack developer. So I'm not just, into AWS. Like I also work with React Native. And like I try to, connect them to AWS because that's how it's going to be used. Like it's not just at the end of the day, just backend.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, I always consider myself a full stack developer, but I would say that the front end is not my specialty, right? The back end orchestration and messaging systems is more what I really like to do. But since you mentioned that, you do a lot of React and, like you said, React Native and all this front end stuff because you come from JavaScript. I'm also a JavaScript kid, right? Like it's amazing. It does everything, right?
Yes.
And the technologies that I leaned into were serverless and JavaScript because the first lambdas were just Node, right? Like the Node environment lends itself to asynchronous processing and these sort of isolate runtimes. So
Yeah.
let's talk about JavaScript a little bit because this is my podcast and I get to talk about the tech that I like. And so I find JavaScript fascinating in how versatile it is. And also, it wasn't our choice, it was somebody else's choice at the browser companies when they decided to make this wonderful little scripting language. So tell me about your journey in JavaScript and, the front end stuff that you do.
Yeah, so like as I told earlier, I was just making stuff like some simple games and input and fetching data with JavaScript. Like XHR was the thing. Fetch was not there at that moment, so people used XHR. Ajax, it's called that. Like I have even forgotten that term. Like so many libraries these days we have got like React query and like Vercel also has a lot of libraries for data fetching and all that. So that's how like I started with JavaScript, but I did not get any use case for transitioning into React. But then like it was just hype for me at that point, 6 years ago. Like, hey, everyone is learning React, you should learn React too. And after like few years and months, I am like, okay, let's what do I do? I make a music app again. Like so then I'm like, okay, it's there are so many components. If I go and write this in JavaScript, it will be too much work. From there, I took a course on a Udemy maybe, but it did not help that much, but it did help to get me started with React. Then I went on and like built the entire thing, put it on GitHub. A lot of people are still forking it, starring it, and
That's awesome. Did you have a chance to evaluate some of the other frameworks like Svelte and Angular, the other big ones?
yeah, I saw other people use Angular, and I did not like. I'm like, I could not wrap my head around. You have to do so much. React is so easy. Like you just like. And I come from the era where hooks were introduced, functional components were introduced. So like I'm like, oh, I cannot do with class components. What are these? Like it's too complex. So just I kept using functional components, hooks, and also. And right now, like I see like Svelte is good as well, but I really like Solid.js because of their signals. They added this, they termed this thing like you can say, and they have a lot of cool stuff built in. So yeah, like if I want to do something from scratch, I try to use with Solid.js.
Okay, yeah. And the benefit that we have as developers is this massive ecosystem of people just creating their own solutions for their own problems. And if you don't like Angular and you do like React, or you don't like React and you do like Angular, it seems that there is a workflow for you no matter like what you're trying to do, because ultimately we're just like wrangling divs, right? Like we're just trying to
Yeah.
wrangle this HTML document in
Yeah.
real time. So what do you think is like the coolest thing JavaScript's doing these days?
Coolest thing, coolest things are still on the browser level, because at the end of the day, it was made for browser and they keep adding all those cool stuff. So, coolest thing right now is LLRT, if you have heard, like, the low latency runtime by AWS. I'm like one of the early adopters of LLRT. So that is one of the coolest thing right now. And also Bun is really cool. I'm using it as a package manager for like all of my projects right now.
Using Bun as the package manager. Is that what you said?
Yeah, yeah, it's really fast.
I haven't tried that yet. It is funny that you mention LLRT as a custom runtime because last year, I guess once Bun came out, everyone wanted the runtime, like their own custom runtime.
Yes.
And the thing about custom runtimes is that like you can then just pick and choose exactly what features you want. It's almost like people who have a favorite Linux distro and they recompile their own kernel for it, right? It's just sort of inevitable evolution. And I think that signals that JavaScript is starting to become boring. And I like that idea that it's becoming stable enough where people are doing the extra crazy legwork of recompiling the kernel.
Yeah. It's like there are so many things. Like I see every day, someone is like, oh, this is faster than this. This is, like this does this thing better. Like everyone is coming up with some tooling around JavaScript.
Yeah, couldn't imagine custom runtimes because early on in the days of Node, there were forks of Node, right? And people couldn't agree on how Node should exist. And now we have forks of runtimes, and we take the scripting language and like push it further into something more custom. Which I wanted to bring up this next point, right? Now that we're talking about custom runtimes and all this stuff basically on the edge of the compute cycle, right? You write your code as a developer, fine. You write it in JavaScript, TypeScript, cool. You send it into this black box, and then the black box returns your computation. And now we have so many choices of black boxes. I wanted to get your take and experience on these sort of like higher level cloud platforms. I call it AWS minus AWS. Things like Vercel and even like Cloudflare workers, right? They are their own custom JavaScript runtime. And then like Vercel is just AWS underneath, but they give you a cool developer experience. How so you've been developing on AWS. What do you make of all these other newer services that are even higher level abstraction?
I mean, like what has, Next.js allowed is it has allowed front end developers to become back end developers. That's the biggest thing, like which Next.js did. Previously, people were just calling APIs, but right now, in the same front end directory, they can just write the API calls as well, and Vercel just takes care of it. Like, hey, let me, just do the server setup, call the, all the APIs, set up the database, and like right now they have even put AI SDKs and all, like which really simplifies the development. But again, like you gotta pay the price for all the leverage they are giving you.
Yeah, what do you see as that trade off then? Like what are we trading off?
We are trading controls. Like if I am, using something which is built on just which is of AWS, I have more controls. But if I say, hey, I am going to use Vercel's function, I lose most of the controls. Like I can set up layers in Lambda and lot of configuration, how much RAM it has. I can even put a Dockerized Lambda there as well to have like totally my things there to bypass the layer limits and deploy some AI models as well on there. So that control I really like, and I prefer to have control in these days at least. But if we give up control, like then great, not great things will happen.
It is a sliding scale, right? Cuz we gave up control of the server to AWS. And then with Vercel, you give up more control over the actual function interface, you know? And it's hard for me to try to imagine another level of abstraction beyond that. But there has to be one because eventually someone will come up with an even simpler version of compute, right? Like, is there an even further step we could take it? Like, is there work that you do now where you think, oh, what if? this was abstracted away, or what if that was really gone? An example I have in my mind is like, I wish we got rid of AWS regions. Like, if I could never think about a region again, and the back end of that is horrendously complex, but I think it could happen and it would be really cool. Are there any other examples that you've come up with where you think, ah,
Right now what has been happening, I see lot of where we needed to take the form data, parse it on the server, then process and validate. So with something like server components, React Server, RCS, like RSC, they are like doing this like in the one code. You just send, you validate data and all that thing. So they have taken away that thing, like, and simplified it into just few lines of code. You send it, we validate and do all that. So
yeah, for our listeners, could you talk a little bit more about the React Server components and like sort of what the what the paradigm shift is there?
I am not a fan of server components. I like, have to. Actually, what when I, do like Lambda, I mostly do Lambda deployments, even if I'm doing server side rendering. And then I manually call, render to string and all those methods. So it just renders the HTML and I can use it anywhere. It doesn't have to be, Lambda. I have the full control of that. But React server components is like some data is on the server, some data is on the client, and yeah, that kind of stuff. So people say, I have not tested myself, that it's like 2x more performant than the traditional client side rendering or the traditional server side rendering. I mean, it's not traditional. Server side rendering is pretty new.
Yeah. No, yes and no. Like, I guess all of the old school PHP apps were all server rendered, right?
Exactly, exactly.
And you had mentioned that Next turned front end developers into back end developers.
Yes.
And this is a trend that I went through and I'm seeing other people kind of go through, but there's still a lot of resistance, I think, from the front end crowd to really take over back end stuff. And I wanted to get your sort of thoughts on what does it mean to be a full stack developer? You call yourself a full stack developer, right? So like what does it really mean now?
It depends. Like, what do you want to do in full stack? If you are an AWS full stack developer, you should be knowing, Amplify as well. And there are all the SDKs which work with mobile apps, with Swift, Kotlin, and whatever they have. And also, like, but if you are, someone who is more into, deploying containers, Kubernetes, again, that will be some other kind of full stack developer, like, so there are like lot of roles, I'll say, but you can pick like, i- if someone can do the front end, back end, and deployment, then I'll call them like full stack developer.
You know, we I've been advocating for serverless as a way of life for nearly a decade now. And I'm always at this middle ground between serious development and serious operations. And the role of DevOps really doesn't encapsulate everything that really has to happen as a DevOps person, right? Like we are writing the actual client code that's being served in the browser, and we're writing the API layer that's pulling from the back end, and we're writing the back end stuff, and we're wrapping it all in this infrastructure as code. And I've been arguing that cloud engineering, cloud native development is all centered around infrastructure as code. It's about getting the front end folks to have the same deployment language as any of the back end people. So what as a for people who are coming from the front end and want to learn more about back end deployment in AWS, what sort of skills or like special considerations do they have to take on in order to like get to that full stack level?
I mean, like, if they are knowing JavaScript already, it's good. But if they don't, like, a language which is widely supported, but just to bring it up, like, AppSync also recently added support for JavaScript rendering engines. So Like if you know JavaScript, you have huge leverage if you are like going to do backend deployment and development infrastructure as code, like it's in TypeScript only. You can use other languages as well, but again it transpiles to TypeScript, and then it transpiles to, again, cloud formation, and then it just deploys the code. So for front end, again, like if you want to transition, like it's like it is a big step. At least someone who just does front end, and they are like, for mobile devs it's like a bigger step, because they don't know anything apart from just Swift, Kotlin and all. Like there are like people who are running Kotlin and Swift on the server, but that's not the most cases. So I'll say learn JavaScript. Not JavaScript. You'll have to learn TypeScript these days, because yeah.
Yeah, I started the new year at my JavaScript meetup, my local JavaScript meetup, just talking about different trends, and my number one trend was definitely now's the time to pick up TypeScript. If you haven't, it's time. It's time to figure out how it works and how you can use it and really learn the benefits of it. Have you found benefits from using TypeScript?
Definitely. Even if I am building a simple, counter app, like I will use TypeScript. Like there is no React involved, but I'll, put a Vite server, and like I'll put TypeScript. So just like I have the full, type completion, and I'm not doing anything, because TypeScript will tell me, hey, this variable can be undefined. So why not you put a check? So I always, now I keep going and putting, hey, if is this an error? Is this an error instance? Then throw error and get all these property and all that. So TypeScript has been really saving me.
Yeah. So when I try to tell, like, if somebody asks me like why should I use TypeScript, and I said, you ever get into that situation where you tell yourself, that's a future me problem. Like right now, it's not a problem. That's a future me problem. TypeScript helps you with your code in pushing the future me problem down the road, because things that will happen at runtime will just happen. Like you can't control bugs at runtime, but you can control bugs during compilation. You can control bugs during the static analysis part, whether or not your types match, whether or not your inputs and outputs match, whether or not your function calls match. Um, and I think that is a powerful thing. It's not just adding types to add them, right?
Yeah. So if someone is coming from, a traditional, like old school programming language, like, Java, Kotlin, and like Go is modern, but all of these have, type system already built in. So it should be easier for them to pick up, TypeScript, because like it's very similar to Java. It's just you have to do bit of, mindset changes, like, hey, the string is in S, like small case, like it's not capital string, so all those quirks.
Yeah, yeah. Syntax. We got AI for that, honestly.
Yeah, yeah.
So another sort of JavaScript thing I wanted to ask you about, which is also kind of cloud related, is Deno. Have you played with Deno and Deno Cloud and Deno Deploy and sort of that ecosystem?
Yes, I did try it once, but I'm like, okay, it seems cool. Like I deployed something pretty basic, but I'm like, I already have everything in Node. Like, why do I, just bit of little performance? Why do I switch to Deno? The ecosystem is still like not as big as Node, and whatever features Deno is getting these days, Node is getting it as well. So for example, like Deno had those from the start they restricted network access, file system access, and you had to pass flags, and Node is adding the same features as well right now.
So I guess it's good for competition.
It's really good. It is improving Node.js a lot.
This type of competition will push Node, and which is hilarious because it was created by the same person. So we, I don't know what that says about humans. Fundamentally, if somebody created something and then it takes off and it has this huge legacy, and then he goes and creates a second thing, and it's another possible legacy, and you're like, okay, what were we really solving in the first place? How can we make this better with the next iteration? Um, you know, as you were making content and you're trying all this stuff on your own and then repurposing it to teach others about what you've learned, which I think is great. I'm trying to do the same thing, and it's wonderful that we have people like you and me and other people like as resources, right?
Yes.
When you made the Learn AWS platform, because that's something that you have, can you tell us about that platform? Maybe like what it runs, what the stack is?
Yeah, so I told you earlier that I really like Solid.js. So it is using, like, for the course platform, it uses Solid.js. It renders on Lambda Edge. So, like, no, no Next.js and all, because, like, I thought, okay, this Solid.js is pretty open. They have added, the support and all. And the first thing when I deployed, it did not work. So, like, there was something called SST. It still is like, not sure if you have heard SST, like, pretty popular, they are
Oh,
getting.
yeah, yeah, yeah. The serverless trans SST stack.
Yeah, SST stacks. So I used it, but, like, they had some bug which was preventing Lambda from rendering. Then I sent, a PR to them to fix it. Then I, waited a couple of days, deployed it again. Everything is working. So again, yeah. So that's the stack. Basically, DynamoDB I'm using, like, DynamoDB API gateway and Lambda. That's my, go-to stack for anything. Like, if you don't have, like, an very special requirement, and, like, even if you do, but, like, DynamoDB is a, like, great choice. Recently they have introduced DSQL as well, but I have no idea about pricing, so I am not going to, comment about it. And, like, the main reason for me, to use this stack is, like, also, one other another thing I'm using is AppSync as well for GraphQL API deployments, and Cognito as well for authorization. So, uh, and what I was noticing, like, there are people from India and there are people from USA. Like, I don't want them to, have so much of latency. So I have deployed it in, I was using CDK, so I can, just change the region and deploy it again on another region. So it's like multiple on multiple region. And with Route 53, I have done, like, latency routing, so it routes to the nearest server.
Oh, that's really interesting because you're doing, multi-region deployments not for redundancy, but for user experience
Yes.
to reduce the latency costs. And have you found that balance to be simple or a pain or,
It took me lot of time to, figure it out. Like, okay, Route 53 has all these cool features. How do I use it? So then, recently only I managed to get it working. Then previously, what I was doing is I was, calling the DNS query from Node, and then getting the URL of the nearest server and storing it in cookie, and then calling it on the, from the front end. So, but right now, like, I, managed to get it done in just one API. You call this API, it will automatically route you to the nearest location.
I see. And that's a feature of Route 53 that you were able to leverage?
Yes.
Gotcha. And then um you mentioned SST. That just goes to CDK now, right? That's all just CDK based?
No, they moved away from CDK, so I don't use SST anymore.
Oh, okay. Yeah, this stuff is changing so quickly. That's why we got to have this conversation because even I can't stay up to date on all the different frameworks and their how they've decided to do things.
So there was this recent development, like, cloud native, like, some APIs which is, apart from, cloud formation. So they say, like, they'll be using, not Terraform. There is another thing. Yeah, Pulumi.
Pulumi, yeah.
Yeah, so they said, like, we are transitioning to this and we are dropping CDK. So I'm like, no, I don't want to go through the Pulumi, creating a Pulumi account and having all that. Like, it's already so much work to get AWS account, secret keys, and everything to work properly.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, there's only so many ways you can transpile something, right?
Yeah.
So once you had your, it's called learnaws.io, and it's a like a educational course that people can sign up for and go through. Um, in the time that you've been in running it and getting feedback from the community, what are some of the things that really stood out in your time running this platform?
A lot of people, they were just, front end developers. They are like, okay, is this good for me? So like I had to, do a lot of convincing. Hey, it's okay. If you are unable to, go through this section or have trouble with this service, you WhatsApp me, you email me, you reach out to me. I'll help you. So few people did reach out to me. Hey, my SSH key is not working properly. Can you help me with that? So like went a few times, like back and forth, and like helped them. So mostly like it's people are not aware about serverless. That's the big thing which I noticed. They are like, what's this service? Why do I even need this service? And there are some people who are already knowing, hey, I am using this tech stack, but they are like, I'm not good at it. I want to be good at it and make some real things with this.
Yeah, we are further along, and I think intermediary content is going to do really well right now, right? Like beyond just the hello world stuff. How can you realistically link this stuff together? And as a self-taught programmer, you really have to be extra careful about copying and pasting things from tutorials for clients, right? For like real work. You have to stop and think like, "Oh, how do I make sure, secrets don't get passed, nothing's in clear text, all those little things."
Yeah, so like I like for my recent client, like I found out, like, not sure if I'm allowed to say this, but like it was like the for RDS they were not using secrets manager, so it's just the plain text, so no rotation is going on and all that. So I'm like, wow, RDS had this feature. I was like amazed, but then I see people not using it. I'm like very disappointed.
It blows my mind because that service will do it for you automatically. Like if you're going to pay for anything in the cloud, it should be to help you keep things more secure and to help you manage secrets rotation, really. You know, I, to be honest, I think um what the people who make Terraform, HashiCorp, I think their real killer moneymaker is Vault, right? It's a regular standard place where you can just store some secrets securely. Same thing with Parameter Store and Secrets Manager on AWS's side, right? Like the amount of money you pay is so small compared to having to have a team of administrators on top of that particular system.
So, do you have any thoughts about people who are still using .env and keeping all their secrets in there?
You know, .env is good for your local configurations, right? So you don't have to make external calls while you're developing. I think that's fine. But having to have like and set up a .env on your distributed systems in this day and age is a little outdated because of the integrations, especially in AWS, where you keep your globals out of view, right? Like you have to kind of understand that your globals are going to be there. You got to have them. They set initial state, but you don't want to keep them in the repo, just even if you have to change them. Like you don't want to hard code them everywhere. So why not use a service that can dynamically handle that, right?
I have seen a lot of people, still using like Lambda environment variables to store database password and all.
Yeah, you probably shouldn't do that. Like I use Lambda variables, environment variables for all kinds of things. You got to set, whatever URL stage you're at to call whatever URLs you need, or like again, like dynamic variables, like inside that Lambda, it has to rotate through, I don't know, six different kinds of data structures, and whatever gets passed in, like, it's self-aware. That's fine. But storing database credentials in anything other than a managed repository is insane, right? Um, and not when I say repository, I don't mean Git. Please do not check. This is a public service announcement for all listeners of Talking Serverless. Do not check anything like a password into your Git version system, please.
Yeah, and for that we have another AWS service which prevents you from doing that. It was Macy, I think.
Yes. Yeah, MACI, I think is how it was.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, there's so much to keep track of. Why not use a managed service for it? Same thing with like your certs, like your SSL certs. Like there is like it's free. You can go ahead and use it and rotate it. Go ahead and put your site behind HTTPS. Like it's basically a checkbox at this point.
So, like about the cost, like, are you okay? Like, does someone? I have not seen a huge production environments, but do you think like how many secrets like big company has? Like, if they have, like thousands of them, they'll be paying like $500 per month.
Yeah, thousands is possible, but I think the cost of it is easily sort of counteracted by the amount of work and the risk of having things out in the open. I mean, the biggest thing, yeah, you could pay if you have thousands of secrets that you have to keep. Like, how many people would you have to have on staff to be able to rotate those and keep track of those properly? Right? Like, it's always going to be way more than calling this particular service. Now, in terms of cost control on AWS, there's also, don't overlog things to CloudWatch because it's expensive to use CloudWatch. AWS isn't like trying to save anybody money, really. Like AWS wants you to spend as much money as possible. So the easiest place for them to start pulling out plenty of money is in CloudWatch logs, right? And so when people say, well, we can't adopt this service because of these costs and everything, and then you could also say, well, what are you using now and how are you overspending on what you already have that could free up budget for something that arguably gives you more value in return?
So about the cost, like I had a question, like,
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
do you have any experience with the AWS recommendations? Like, are they any helpful in cost reduction?
Oh, no. No, like all of their cost tools. Well, you built the pricing calculator. You know how insane like trying to calculate usage is. Um, that's why people like Corey Quinn exist.
Yeah.
Like it's a full time job to be able to figure out what that bill actually says. And I again, AWS doesn't have any incentive to make their pricing any better, like or any more transparent, right? Like they'll the updates to the console, you can kind of see some stuff, but it's I never found their tools to be as good as like a human brain team.
It's really difficult, to understand their pricing. Like it was really hard for me to build that DynamoDB calculator. I'm like, there is RCU, there is WCU, but if you use provision mode, there are other things for it, and there are other costs for it. So it's like so confusing. But
Yeah, in the
I'm not sure.
pricing, because AWS prices on like these ladder tiers, you can't just do a straight function calculation. You have to build in all those breakpoints where the costs change marginally based on the level of input, right? And it's a it's a sophisticated function, and again, I think they do it on purpose because they're trying to maximize their profit. Um, you know, but the last thing I wanted to get to you, because I started out in IoT as well. I looked through your LinkedIn or whatever, and I saw that you had a mention about IoT projects, and I was like, "Ooh, that's kind of cool," especially with your history of JavaScript. Have you ever used Johnny Five?
I did try it, but it did not have support for all the external hardware I was using, so I used it for a bit. And again, you will not find lot of resources. Also, like Lua is coming great for embedded devices like for ESP32 and other sorts of microcontrollers. And Raspberry Pi has also launched their Pico, so they support MicroPython. So yeah, like I used recently, like few months ago, I did try Amazon like AWS IoT core, and I could make it work. So I was like, I think I was logging pollution data, like how much PM2 there is, so I was sending it to DynamoDB and all. So yeah, I got it to work. They had some examples and all. So it's in C++ only. So again, like for JavaScript, like it will be hard for you to connect to like AWS services, when like it's really secure. The AWS services, like you have to install the certificate and all. Ideally, most of the services, that hey, I'll just let you connect, but what will end up happening is like they'll go through a man in middle attack.
Exactly. Yeah. Provisioning IoT fleets, like the hardware to put the certificates on each of the chips, uh, is a process. So, can you tell me quickly, kind of like what your IoT project was like, or what you learned from it?
Yeah, like it was like I got some sensor, like it was from Nova. So like it just I got like it was using UART. So I used ESP32. Like I got the data. I kept pulling the data like every few seconds, and I then sent it to IoT core. I also had to download the certificate and install it as well in the device. Like I saw some tutorial as well, and also like AWS docs was bit helpful. So yeah, like I could just connect to MQTT broker and just keep sending without worrying about scale, and I could connect Lambda, DynamoDB, and all those of sorts of services. I tried it out. Like if I still connect that device, it will start sending data to DynamoDB right now. So yeah, I have left it somewhere. Like I was moving to a different city. So yeah.
Yeah, IoT was a huge thing like 6, 7 years ago, and then since then it's kind of calmed down a lot. We were trying to do all these kinds of use cases where these independent companies basically wanted to rebuild like an Echo device, right? But like put it in everything. Like your doorknob has an Echo in it. You talk to your door and it unlocks for you. Like all those kinds of things, which really hit a heyday a few years ago, but then hasn't kind of come back up. And but I still like IoT Core. I still like the idea of a fully managed MQTT broker, which is a lot of work, right? Like if you want to set up your own stun turn server with MQTT.
Yes, I have done that.
Oh, you have, right?
Yeah, I have set up broker and all. Like it's like, oh, it's getting too much data. Like so, I like previously worked in IIT Delhi, so they were putting the this PM sensor, like particulate matter sensor, like on the buses. They had Raspberry Pi, and they were sending data every second, and there were hundreds of them. So scaling, and like they were using Google Cloud to store. So the cost was the big database or like big query, something they have. So yeah, it was just going up. So and like there I was like, okay, the managed like MQTT is costing a lot. Let's set up like a cloud VM, and then install the broker, and then connect it to it, and like again lot of hassle to do all that.
Yeah. I mean, it is, we do pay for it. Like, we do pay AWS money. But we always realize like how much more work we'd have to do otherwise. All right. Well, we are coming up to the top of the hour, Shivam, and we've had a really cool conversation. I really appreciate your insights and your journey and how you're putting together content for people to learn from now and engaging on social and all that stuff. But I have one really big question. The most important question at the end is, if you could become an instant expert in any field, but not in technology,
Okay.
what would it be?
Is music considered a technology?
You could say music.
Yeah, like I mean, like I want to be able to like produce some, play some songs, produce my own music. Like that would be like my kind of, if I could become. I tried learning guitar, like, and I just like I gave up. I'm like, it's too hard, it's too hard to press the strings, like my fingers are hurting, like, and all that. Like I tried for couple of months, then I'm like, okay. I am good at development. Let's stick to that.
It's funny what we reveal about ourselves, because like other people would say like, oh yeah, I can play like some people can just play guitar because they've practiced enough and they get a feel for it. I noticed you got a set of keys in the background, you're probably over there making beats or whatever, but that's really cool. But you also, I mean, I think you said you had a music program that you wrote, right? Like a music.
It was like the first time I like put a open source like music, like you can say audio player. So what it did was it just connected to YouTube APIs. It fetched the song. I had a node server which parsed the MP3 and gave it to front end so it could play the songs. Then recently, like I a client came to me and he's like, I want like a Spotify like music platform. So like I worked with him and got him something.
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah. The adaptability of technology allows us to, play with things that are interesting, but we probably could never actually pull off. Like I would never be an actual professional musician, no matter how many times I try to make beats, no matter how many times I pick up my guitar. Um, but I can write some software. It's fine.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it gets boring. Like, I'm just doing this. I already know how to do this. Like, it only stays interesting, because it's moving fast. Like, if it was too slow, like, it would just get boring, like, really boring.
This is true. I think I don't know if it's a good thing or a sickness that we have where we always want to find the new thing, always want to find what's cool, what's interesting, what's new right now. But yeah, that's wonderful. Well, as we're gonna wrap up, Shivam, did you want to give a shout out to our listeners? How can they reach out to you? How can they follow you? How can they support you? That kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on LinkedIn. You can just search me with, Shivam Veer Singh, or like via Learn AWS.io. Like you can just reach out to me or mail me at shivam@learnaws.io. I'm always, the best way to reach out to me is via mail. I'm always there.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, thanks again for your time, Shivam. I had a great time talking to you,
Same here.
and hope that our listeners gain something from our conversation. And I encourage you all to check out Shivam's work. His blog is really good, on learnaws.io. I do like the blog. It's got a lot of different small, unique use cases, like using S3 as a local file mounting system instead of Google Drive. Like, that was pretty cool. That's just a little bit of a taste. Like, I definitely want our listeners to go check it out. And with that, thank you all so much for joining me today on Talking Serverless. If you have any suggestions for other guests who should come on or topics that we should cover in the serverless community, Feel free to reach out to me directly on LinkedIn, Paul Chin Jr. And with that, I have a new closing phrase. For all you developers out there, may your DNS resolve and your caches bust clearly. That's it. Thank you, and have a great night, day, whatever. Bye.